The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Thank you for joining us here in FRC Media. We are heading closer to the November 7th election, and we're speaking to as many candidates as possible between now and then. I'm pleased to be joined today by one of the 18 candidates on the ballot for City Council, challenger Alexander Silva. Alex, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Hi, Keith. Great. Thanks for having me.
The preliminary election, you fared very well, finishing 9th, right there at that line. 2 years ago, I believe you were about, what, 15th?
I think it was 15th. It was like a...
So, I mean, why do you think you did better in this, again, one poll?
Yeah. Well, I like to think that my message has been resonating. I'm very humbled with the turnout, or with my turnout for the preliminary. The city's turnout was a little bit lackluster, so let's hope that we can get overall turnout in the general election much higher. But I like to think that my message has remained consistent since the last election, and people are noticing and listening, and they're liking what I'm saying.
So what does this give you confidence now over this last stretch? And I guess, are you going to campaign any differently?
Yeah, definitely not any extra confidence. It's a close race still. Right. If you see the numbers, I think there's a couple candidates kind of in the same area. But it's not really going to be changing how I'm campaigning. I'm still going to be doing what I am, getting messages out, my message out there, knocking on doors.
And I know I asked you this when we spoke before the preliminary. You know, is there one specific issue you want to focus on if elected as a council?
Yeah, as a former reporter, transparency is big with me because I think with it comes accountability. When you're transparent in city government, you just put more information out there available to the public, and you just have a more educated, voter base, and you don't have to explain things to everyone about what's going on in the city that they live in. It makes people get more willing and wanting to participate in the process more, and then if information is out there, I think accountability comes with it, and I think there could be some more accountability in Fall River.
Previous to this interview, you recorded a 3-minute statement that we also share with voters, and you mentioned about transparency, but you kind of tied it to your work in terms of you're on the Preservation Society Board and the Community Preservation Committee.
Yep.
You kind of tied it around that work and how the city has maybe not been as transparent or willing to share information about some sales of buildings.
Yeah, as a volunteer with the Preservation Society, I've been doing that for 5 years now. It all kind of came about when the NB Boarding School on Morgan Street was going to be demolished. I was just kind of doing some research, and in that process, I learned that the city didn't even know where its copy of the purchase and sale agreement for that sale was. So all of the protections that residents had that should have been in that contract was just lost. And if you know what happened, the historic school was demolished, and now it's essentially a subsidized private parking lot for a restaurant. And that's like basically all taxpayer funded. It was a $5,000 school sale. I brought the issue up to the city council years ago, and there has still to date, I don't think, been an agenda item even to discuss it. You would think that city councilors would recognize the importance of keeping track of the city's contracts and making sure they don't go missing from City Hall, but that's something I definitely want to address if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, is figuring out maybe how these contracts went missing, and more importantly, making sure it never happens again.
Crime has been an issue in Fall River for a while. At a recent mayoral debate here, the two candidates were sort of on either side, where former Mayor Sutter was saying that crime is on the rise. Mayor Coogan had statistics that said otherwise. But regardless, as a city councilor, you're going to get calls on, this happened in my neighborhood, about crime. How do you plan on, coming up with ideas with the other 8 councilors to help the police department do what they need to keep the city safe?
Yeah, I think the most important part with public safety in regards to the police department is just getting that department up to full staffing. I think it's about 40 to 50 officers below what it should be, and that affects public safety across the board. I mean, I've heard from the chief how it kind of has to make them low prioritize quality of life issues, which are, important to every resident. But obviously, I have to deal with more serious crimes as they arise. And that's just a choice that the police department shouldn't have to make, and the residents shouldn't have to feel the repercussions of. So I would hope to work with the council to, increase the budget of the police department to allow for that expanded staffing. I like a lot of the kind of initiatives that the department and the administration has done to try and get more officers to apply, keep them there, the uniform program, where they're paying for the uniforms now instead of the recruits. I think all of that's good. I've heard talk about Shot Spotter. I know it's kind of disputed how effective it would be. But I would like to say that overall, I think public safety is very, very, very much tied to economic development. I think that if you're focusing on economic development and you're raising, the quality of life of everyone, people are going to be less apt to want to commit crime, if they're living happy lives. So I think it's very important to keep economic development in the forefront of this discussion because it really is all tied together.
So let me just ask you your definition of what that means, economic development. Some people will say bringing more business in. Some people will call it just improving neighborhoods, just making sure that buildings are kept up, whether the owner is someone who lives in Fall River or an absentee landlord. I mean, I guess what would be your definition of economic development, and how and what types of examples you'd give that would raise that quality of life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, all of that I think counts as under economic development, making sure the city looks good. But generally, what you want to try and do is increase the commercial tax base, because that'll offer the biggest respite to residents paying property taxes. When you increase the tax base, you don't have to raise taxes for everyone. You just have more of a pool of money to draw from to do the city's services. So the waterfront redevelopment project, I think, is going to be a big part of this, because it's opening up almost 20 acres of new land, and I think it'll be very important to tie that with a lot of mixed-use development to satisfy the community's residential and commercial needs. But also, I think it is about bringing better quality jobs to Fall River and kind of giving people that pathway up for upward mobility.
One of the roles of the City Council is oversight of the budget. It actually approves the budget that comes down from the mayor. You mentioned accountability and transparency. Is that another way for you to try to leverage that as a counselor? Looking what's in the budget, asking more questions, trying to get those answers?
Absolutely. I would not be afraid to reduce line items or remove them completely if I don't think that it's the money is doing the job that it's supposed to be. I'm not afraid to leverage that to help make community decisions that are in everyone's best interests. As a reporter, I was a reporter for 3 years, covering the only reporter for 2 small towns in central Massachusetts. I had to do budget articles every year. I sat down with it was the finance director, the town manager. I would just sit down with them and we would go over the entire budget, and I would have to, translate it into a easily digestible article for people
Not
to
easy
understand.
to do.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a big article, but a lot of information, and I kind of took pride in making sure that everyone understood, what they needed or wanted to understand, and I think I would try to carry that over into Fall River City Council, just being a megaphone for the residents.
Regardless of who's elected mayor, either Sam Sutter or Mayor Coogan, how do you view yourself as the relationship you'd like to have with whoever is mayor?
Yeah, I might be naive in saying this, people often laugh, but I think that every public official should be, making decisions in the best interests of Fall River and its people. And, if we don't all agree on what that is, that's fine. But if, from your heart, you're trying to do it for the good of the city, I think we'll get along fine. I'm very happy and open to work with either mayor. Currently on the Preservation Society, I work with Mayor Coogan a bit. We're a community housing development organization, so we help create affordable housing in the city right now. We've done 7 units, I believe, so far. So I'm happy to work with whoever.
Yeah. So let me ask you, in the final minute that we have here this week, what are some of the things when you have the opportunity to speak with a voter, whether you're out at an event or going door to door? What are some of the things, I guess, 2 questions. What are the tactics you use when meeting someone? And then, what do you hope to hear from those voters in terms of learning more about Alexander Silva?
Yeah, I always ask people if they have any questions or issues in the city, just because, you know, everyone living in different neighborhoods, different problems arise. And what was the first part of the question? Sorry.
No, just like how do you approach it? How do you approach it? And you're answering it, yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of like to dream big, and I think the city could do a better job of planning for the future. So I like to kind of capture that possibility and opportunity for the city, looking at long-term planning. I think that Fall River has a bad habit of settling for the first thing that comes, because we don't really have a good opinion of our own city, unfortunately. And I think this is detrimental to the overall development. I think, you know, past redevelopment, sometimes we take the first proposal that comes along when we really could have, you know, enhanced the process to try and make some proposals come in that better fit the community's needs. The Armory is kind of the discussion right now for that, whether it should be market rate housing or something that brings people to downtown and act as an economic like a driver. I think that would be more useful for the downtown, especially in terms of connecting the waterfront with it. But at the end of the day, as long as the Armory gets saved, I think it'll be better than not getting saved, which is, you know, the city's track record for a lot of historic buildings. But basically, you know, trying to capture people's hopes and dreams for the city, because a lot of people love Fall River, and you always hear that there's so much potential in this city, and I want us to stop talking about that potential and start moving towards it.
Yeah. Alexander Silva, thank you for joining us. All the best in the election. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us here on FRC Media. Please make a point to vote on Tuesday, November 7th.